adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast. And a little tip for the next time you are creating a character: if you pick the Hobgoblin of the Fae as your background, you take as your race. You take the criminal background and use an Italian American accent. Then you too can be Fae Tony, the Hobgoblin Mobgoblin. My name is Martin O'Dwyer, and I'll be your host for today's episode. And joining me, as always, is your host Conor O'Brien. How are we doing, Conor?
You need to just play that character already. I've heard you make that joke before. You just need to play the character, Martin.
Look, I won't lie. I found it. I was like, oh, what would be a good thing for Prime? I was like, oh, I could do the Law and Order thing, but you did that already. So I was like, right, Fae Tony it is.
What episode was that again?
Oh God, I can't. It was like 3 episodes ago, I think. Like it was.
Oh, what was
it was far too close for me to rip it off. Like, I'm pretty sure I tweeted that intro from the Micflayers podcast Twitter like a year ago, so I was like, it's been long enough.
Wait 1 second now. Was it like the rules glossary?
I think maybe. I think it was like I think it was the third rules glossary one. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think otherwise we're looking at going back too far to level 4 feats, expert classes, issue at high level. Yeah, it's too far back. TVKs, blah blah blah. So I think it was almost definitely the rules glossary one where you have Rick Astley as our thumbnail.
Yes, because he knows the rules, and so do you.
And so do you. Oh, that man has brought so much joy. I once saw a brilliant video where Foo Fighters are putting on a concert, and just midway through they're like, here's Rick Astley, and everyone's like, what? And then everyone's like, holy shit, that is Rick Astley. And then they just do a really great version, like rock version of Never Gonna Give You Up, and they're all singing it. It's so good.
If you look up Rick Astley's YouTube channel, he's done a cover of Everlong.
Oh, that sounds really cool. I'm gonna look up more.
That's the only time anyone has ever said that about Rick Astley.
Wait. I'm immediately on edge now because I'm like, am I gonna go and it's gonna say Rick Astley covers Everlong, and I'll click into it and it'll just be
that would be the big brain play. That really would be the big brain play by Mr. Astley. But I think it is actually just genuinely a cover of Everlong. But I too have not clicked into it because
because of the inherent danger of being rickrolled.
It's more to do with the fact that I once heard Tom Jones cover "Do I Want to Know" by the Arctic Monkeys, and I nearly had an aneurysm. So I'm sussy about Rick Astley as much as I do love him covering like what is literally maybe my second favorite song of all time.
Yeah, be up there for me. Yeah, definitely top 5. I'd say definitely my favorite Foo Fighters song, hands down.
Yeah,
there's a lot of great, but I mean, I can go through phases of other ones, but
it's not a phase,
I always come back to Everlong. It's not a phase, man. I always come back to Everlong. Everlong is just. I used to be able to play it on guitar back when I played guitar. Back in my young days when I wanted to woo chicks. Spoilers, it didn't work even once. Fun story, kids. If you want to like impress people with your guitar playing skills, you should probably have a personality behind that as well. So.
And just don't bring your guitar to a house party.
Unless you're my dad. My dad is now. To be fair, he specifically will not bust it out until someone asks him, and also usually until it's after about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And then he'll be like, "Cool, hey, we have to turn off the radio because that's too loud." But does everyone want to like? Does every single person in this 20 to 30 person group want to sing a song with me while I play guitar? And all their friends are always like, "Yeah, sure." And then they go to bed at 7 in the morning when the sun is coming up. My parents did that at my wedding. I was in bed by 3 on my own wedding, and my parents kept playing until the sun came up, and then half of the people that stayed up singing with them got up to watch a rugby match, which was on early the next morning, and my uncle had like an hour of sleep. He was walking back to his room, and someone was already getting up for breakfast, and they're going, "Frank, what are you doing?" He's like, "I'm just going to grab an hour there before the match starts."
Man, that was such a good night. Yeah, fuck it, man. I had a point I was going to bring up there, and it's just gone. It's just left my brain.
Yeah,
because it's the weekend and my brain is just not switched on. But Conor, today we're going to talk about crime.
What have we got crime you're going to commit, Martin?
I haven't thought about that.
Gotta think of something.
That's negligence. Oh.
Well done, well played.
Yes, that was entirely on the spot. But yeah, no, yeah, this is kind of inspired by so like my I was saying to you, I think saying in a podcast maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, my guys are just arrived in my like Greek/Roman area called Pontypridd,
Yep.
and it's they've had an NPC there for like a couple months. One of my players, like he's got he made a contact with like a guy in who was like a member of like the most prevalent gang in the city that he's from. Excuse me. And his name is Sai, and he basically made him his like unofficial right hand man throughout the course of playing through that. They kind of like met them in one arc and kind of continued to correspond with them, and like then like in downtime, like he was like, hey, you know, I could do with like someone to just like look after stuff in the city for me when I'm out adventuring. And so he kind of like hired him on, and he's basically, like I said, become this kind of right hand man. So they're fine. He's been in Pontypridd for a while, for about 3-4 months now. So he was there when all hell broke loose and like all the monsters came out from the sea. The country was split in 3 pieces, like all the stuff that went down.
Yes.
So for the last while now, Arandir, who is the my rogue swashbuckler we talked about last week, he's been like pushing to go and see him. So they've gone to see the guy, and because I was doing up a sheet for him, and he's a part of the group he's a part of in Cirith Lara, which is the sea elf city. They're called the Anglers, and his like the narrative that we
love
built.
that name.
Oh, thank you. I'm very happy with it. But he built a kind of narrative over the course of a while that like through scrying on him and stuff like that he had been in the city Cadmia, where it appears is like the kind of like the front line of the like human resistance in the country, because like the Void God with an army of monsters has now taken over one of the 5 city states and is pushing from north to south to try and take over the rest of the country. So they've come in to stop that. And while I was just doing up a sheet, I was like, yeah, geez, like I was thinking about like crime and criminal organizations and like what is in 5e if you want to make like a gang or a thieves guild or like anything like that, you know, any kind of a criminal organization, or even if you don't want to just make like, even if you don't have like a character who wants to make one, even just like a character that like engages in crime. Like if you have a like, are you playing a thief? You don't actually steal shit. And then I also remembered that in my original party that I DM'd for, there was a halfling rogue. I think it was a halfling. Yeah, it was a halfling rogue, and he always wanted to go out and steal stuff, and I would let him do it, and like, so depending on his roles, I would give him loot or not, and see how well he got away, and like obviously because he's a rogue, his stealth skills were insane, so he got away most of the time. But I was kind of building up to like what could we do with that, and I was like thinking like, yeah, what is actually there to support a player or a DM of a player who wants to like actually like spend time like doing crimes, like, and not like like Joe, like not anything insane, but like Joe, like robbery, or like if someone wants to be like a mafia guy and is like set up like a protection racket or something like that, you know, like, what kind of stuff is there in 5e to like build off of, at least if you like how much of it you have to homebrew and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of just led me into this. Conor, what, like, you've made quite a few like criminal gangs and stuff like that in either campaign go through. I distinctly remember the Crimson Corsairs. We had a pretty memorable encounter with like their gang leadership at one point. Lorenzo? No, that's a Critical Role thing. Sorry.
That is, he has a name. And I cannot. I'll find it in a bit. But yeah, the head of the Crimson Corsairs is like, or at least that faction. He's like an admiral. There's like a few admirals, and they each kind of have their own territories they work out of. If you consider them like individual crime families, but they all identify under the banner of the Crimson Corsairs. And yeah, I decided to base this particular admiral, fleet admiral, off of Negan from The Walking Dead.
Yes.
And he was a psychopath.
Yeah, I do remember. Like, I remember when it was like, yeah, give me your spear there so I can stab this guy, and I was like, no, go and give that spear over to this person.
He brought you 3 in as recruits and one other dude you didn't recognize. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of frame the situation. So he's like kind of sussing you out, and I wanted to give you the impression that he was like onto you. Like he's like, now I know that there's definitely at least one person here who's not trustworthy, and like I wanted you guys to be like, oh no, he definitely has sussed us out or whatever.
Mm.
But actually, the fourth guy who was with you worked for the city guard, and he was going undercover. So he wanted your spear because he was going to basically run your men through with it, and be like, "Do you think you could get past me that easily? You know what? We're not fools here."
Yeah.
And he was gonna kill him. But yeah, you were like, because you were like, look, that's essentially an extension of his person. He's not gonna hand over his very personal weapon to someone. So then, what I thought was a very Negan move of the whole thing was that, because I think it's okay, so his right hand man is a hobgoblin, evocation wizard, right? Who basically does us a lot of really devastating spells, right? And I thought, like, okay, if I was to have one of the other guards or this hobgoblin guy do something to Lug, now Martin's character, Martin's not gonna budge on that because he's like, he'll take the hit, he doesn't mind, it's fine. He'd much, as a proud Kale, he would much rather stand his ground than this. But instead of hurting Lug, they shot a lightning bolt at Arkham, I think it was. So, yeah, it was Arkham, who was immediately next to Lug. And then it's like that, which I think, again, it was like the most Negan move I think you could do, because it's like, oh no, when you misbehave, they get punished, because that's so much worse if someone else gets hurt for something you did, as opposed to if you do something and get hurt as a result, you can kind of own that and be like, well, I got hurt, but that's my call and what I did. But when someone else gets hurt, it's such a mind fuck. Yeah. So
No,
he was fun. Sorry, go on anyway.
No, sorry, no. I was just gonna say, like, yeah, that was like a really great, like, impactful moment. Like, that's obviously like still quite a memorable moment, because that was like, that's got to be like at least 2 years ago now.
That's pre-COVID. So that's
easily, wow. Yeah, it is. Yeah, but like I still remember that like really, really well, because it definitely made an impact. Like, and like very much felt like, yeah, no, like this is what like a criminal, like a gang, like would be like it very much felt true to like the whole like might makes right, force, intimidation, like coercion, all that kind of stuff. Like really, really really well done, I thought. Like I had two. I think I've like two gangs that have made like spent any length of time or made like a significant impact at my guys. And one was like the very first kind of gang they ran into. It was like as part of their first mission. They were going through this town, and the town was basically being held hostage by a gang called the Black Hand, and they would send like a cart through twice a day to basically collect like a tithe from the town, whether that was like food, drink, jewelry, gold, valuables, whatever.
Yeah.
And people would basically, two agents would bring that in, and they would just four would bring that in, and then they would just like take stuff from the houses and stuff, and people just wouldn't resist, because it was just like a farming village. There was no like there was no one there to like actually fight back. There was no city watch. My guys came through on the way to their mission, and like obviously it's such classic like hero bait. It's like, oh, this city is being held up by a gang of unscrupulous thieves. Whatever will happen, there's no one to protect them. And so yeah, they did, and God, they went like, the reason I say it made an impact is because they still talk about what they did to that gang, like to this day.
Yeah.
That was like level 5. They're level 14 now. That was like 3-4 years ago. Like long story short, to give an idea, the main guy of the gang, who, because like they basically they
you said long shory stort, by the way, just to point that out.
long story short, they killed the first group that came in to collect the tithe, and then because they didn't come to collect the tithe, more of the Black Hand came in to mess with the town. Like, oh, alright, you're fighting back now. They killed them, and then they went and tracked down the rest of the Black Hand and ended up fighting the leader and like his like top 5 guys or whatever. And they killed them all, and they mounted the leader on a spike in the middle of the road through his chest.
That's some Vlad the Impaler stuff right there.
Yeah, they were just like, the druid is like, can I just like grow like a sapling, like a really pointy sapling with no branches out of the ground? And I was like, you have druid craft, so I guess you could. And she was like, awesome. And then like, I think it was, who would have been? I think they literally just all of them like as a 4-man killed the guy, and then grabbed his body and just picked up and like slam dunked him onto it. And they just left that in the middle of the road. Like, they just left that in the middle of the road. The other one is the anglers, and that's because they've had like a lot more interaction with them, and like an NPC from the anglers has become like a fairly core NPC to a player's story in terms of like a relation, a bond, if you will, which is actually probably the technical term for it. But yeah, he's been in Ponce Blood and he's doing cool stuff, and he's actually set up another like his gang is called the Anglers, and they have that mask. It's like a pale porcelain mask with like a one green gem in the middle, and you can wear it, and it'll give you like advantage on stealth checks in dark areas and dark vision if you don't already have it.
Cool.
And so like when he started leading their militia, and their militia is called the Furies, and because he works with them, they have a similar mask, and it's white porcelain, but the gem in the middle is like crimson red, and they have like horns carved into the top of it, and there's like a jagged teeth and jaw line carved into the bottom, so they look like demons, like these like cyclopean gem-eyed demons.
Picturing kind of the Oni masks. Are they Oni masks?
Yeah. No, you're totally right.
Or there's a different name for the ones that the samurai wear that cover the lower half of their mouth, but they're like a big snarling demonic smile.
Yeah, that's are you thinking of like a Hanya mask?
Maybe.
Yeah. It's like similar. It's like a demon mask thing. So they're doing that kind of stuff, and like, yeah, I was just kind of like wondering to myself, like, I was like, is crime a thing? I was like, I know crime is a thing in D&D, but like, is it really a thing? Like, is it a thing that they've put time and resources and effort into? So I like had a look into it, right? Conor, have you looked at crime as a downtime activity before?
I've definitely come across it in Xanathars. I've never had to run it. I'll say in our long kind of form first campaign, you guys are all very much, well, no, I take that back. One of you actually was a rogue who was specifically an assassin and stuff. But we didn't really do a whole lot of downtime in that. The few times we did, it was kind of an accelerated downtime. There was a couple times where you guys did work on some magic items or pay someone to work on some magic items. But yeah, for the most part, you guys were just kind of on mission pretty much non-stop. So there wasn't a huge amount of time for downtime. In this campaign, crime hasn't come up only because none of the current party members, past or present, really,
we don't have a rogue.
Sorry?
It's because we don't have a rogue.
Well, I mean, Aerith was part rogue, but that was more in the vein of like an assassin and a hired killer, you know, as he was a blood hunter and stuff. But he wasn't like a criminal in that way. His assassin, features or whatever were more geared towards, I'm going to kill this creature, this dangerous monster or whatever from a distance with a bow or a rifle or something like that.
I would say we've gotten like a slight flavor of it though with the Elven Rebels and Resistance and stuff. We did like a lot of the missions we would have done with like say like the Redalian Resistance and with the Elven Rebels and stuff like that to like earn their trust or like be allowed to go and talk to them. A lot of that would be similar stuff that I could see myself inputting into, like if one of my guys is like, no, I actually want, like, there's this Angler gang, I actually want, like, I want to join this gang, what do I need to do to like progress up the ranks and become maybe like a captain or something in the Anglers and stuff like that. So like, yeah, I think we have gotten like a little bit of a flavor of it this campaign, but yeah, like totally, we haven't had like your classic like, oh, I'm a rogue and I'm like in the tavern and I'm using thieves' cant to try and talk to like my underground network of spies and like all these people.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that actually in the first one. Not so much the crime downtime activity, but in our first campaign, so the Crimson Corsairs were like the main organization you guys have come up against. You haven't really dealt with many criminals. No. Well, unless you count the Seekers, who are like a collection of warlocks that are bound to the librarian, who is this knowledge seeking. They're usually mages who are like deep undercover and they infiltrate libraries and magical universities to like steal secrets and then make their own copies and then destroy the originals. So they have the information, but no one else does.
I'd argue they're more like a cult though.
They're more cultish than they are criminal, I would say as well. Yeah, but in campaign 1 we had a recurring bad guys in the White Spiders.
Oh yeah, how did I forget that? I always talk about drowning that guy in the sink.
Yeah, he was the White
Yeah,
Spider. Yeah.
yeah, he was. Yeah, and
Uh,
I nearly said Robbie, but no, like yeah, Shamash had the White Spider pirate captain coat for like the entire campaign.
for the entire campaign. So like I had this whole thing I taught over like within the first couple sessions where the White Spiders kind of have their fingers in all the pies. Because they're not really into one particular form of crime. They're just kind of the general like universal crime thing.
Mhm.
Um, they're originally a drow organization, but they do have other members as well, which is why they're called the White Spider Drow, of course.
Mm.
But they have these goggles that they wear, and the thing is, in order to identify themselves in public, they have these special magical goggles that can recognize patterns on clothing. So Mike was wearing that captain's coat, which is just a big billowing kind of captain's coat. But if anyone was to take these goggles and put them on, they'd see that there is a big white spider emblem on the back of it and on the breast here as well.
Mm.
Um, and the idea is that we can recognize our own because we know there's a special ink we use for that, and then we can detect it and all that. But he also had a pair of those, and occasionally he'd just be in a location and there'd be some dodgy looking guy in the corner and he'd be like, can I just pop on the goggles? And I'd be like, yeah, no, he doesn't have the marking. And they're like, okay, cool. So he's not at least not a member of the White Spiders.
Yeah, yeah.
But they were cool. They came back a few times. I remember one of the very first missions you had to do was to I believe scuttle a ship.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, we scuttled the ship and then we stole all the iron out of it.
Yeah, because they were transporting a bunch of it, and then like you got onto the ship and you killed all of them, and then you were like told to get rid of it. But I remember that was such a blunder of a mission because you were meant to do it at night. So you met up with one of what's his name? His name was
Vizerno.
Pizarno. Pizarno was the kind of information broker who got you the job and kind of like employed you as a middle party.
Mm.
And he sent you to do this, and he has all these Kenku who are his spies because Kenku can mimic things, so they can like perfectly replicate things they've heard.
Mm.
And yeah, he has a network of them. He sent you to meet one of them. They were like, the boat's over here. We get onto the boat and get rid of these guys, and then basically sail it out and sink it or whatever. But there was obviously some miscommunication because I remember you guys did that, and then you were like, "Oh, can we they were like, can we take all this iron and maybe sell it on?" And I was like, and I wasn't ready for that because it's like my second session
Yeah.
ever as a DM, and I was like, "Oh, sure, yeah, I guess." So that happened, and then
Connor, you know what that would have been a great opportunity for?
go on,
Tensor's floating disk.
it would have, it would have.
Connor has a thing about Tensor's floating disk.
I just think it's a really cool spell that doesn't get a lot of use. That's all.
Oh,
I just think it's neat.
I was literally like, I have to make that meme. I have to make that meme.
Connor, what is it with you and Tensor's floating disc? I just think it's neat. You can take that still.
Oh my god, yes.
Um, but yeah, and yeah, the whole mission kind of went sideways because you did kill the drow, and then you got on board, and I think you wanted to take the iron, but then you took so long at it that the sun was coming up and
Yeah.
the docks were getting busy again. And so someone's like, we should go back and check with Vizarno if there's this thing here. And you went back to talk to him, and he's like, wait, you're telling me the sun's already up, there's a bunch of dead drow, and you haven't scuttled the ship yet? You had one job. Yeah.
Oh, good times, man. Good times. That the innocence of that first D&D campaign.
Oh, there's so many lessons learned. I remember in a beautiful stroke of like completely unplanned luck, one of the players, Kieran, who was
Yes.
playing Theron,
Yeah. Oh
the
god,
the
yeah.
drow, he was a drow rogue, but I made him
Yeah.
part warlock later on. He was like he played the first couple sessions, and then like he kept telling me he was going to come back after it, but never did.
It was
Sorry?
Saren, wasn't it?
Oh, sorry, Saren, not
Yeah,
Saren.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're right.
Sorry, yes.
And
Because I fought him later on in the campaign then. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but like, so right from the start, he had this like whole thing where he was like, "Oh yeah, what if I was like a drow prince that was like exiled from his home, and then I kind of." He's like, I want to be like maybe a little Batman-ish, so I'm like on the rooftops fighting crime or whatever. And he decided to go a rogue, and I'm like, that works perfectly. Yeah, that sounds really cool. And then Tara's like, oh, like I'm a wood elf from a hidden village, and a drow stole our gem that conceals our village from the outside world. And I was just like, I was like, oh, I can perfectly meld these two immediately. And then of course Kieran basically dropped out of the campaign after 2 sessions. But what happened was he didn't trust Vizarno after like the very first job. So
Mm.
he was like, when everyone else goes into the front of his bar to go and meet him, can I sneak in the back door with my thieves' tools and like have a look around? And I was like, sure. So I had him roll. I think he rolled like a nat one on the stealth, something stupid
Oh.
low. And then I said, we'll come back to that in a second. And then I moved on to you guys, and midway through you guys talking to Vizarno, one of his like henchmen or whatever, or bodyguards, came in with Saren under his arm and threw him in front of him. He goes, I found this guy breaking in the back door. And then in that moment, Kieran came to me and he was like, hey, I'm really sorry about all that. I didn't know if I can trust you, blah, blah, blah. Look, if in future I can make it up to you by doing a job, if you need extra jobs done, I'm happy to do it. And I made note of that. And then after he left, I just had his character exit by Vizarno taking him on full time,
Mm.
which turned into Vizarno actually being not just an information broker, but like a patron of a very powerful Fae. And then Saren got to be part of that as well. So he was also mixed up in the whole Fae thing. And then when you went to go and try and get a Fae patron, so you could go part Warlock, he was like, "Fine, you can be my champion if you can beat this other Archfae's champion." And you were like, "Yeah, sure, bring it on." And then you showed up. And you saw your patron and this other patron, and you saw Vizarno standing over there, and you're like, "What's Vizarno doing here?" And he's like, "What the hell are you guys doing here?" And then out walks Saren, and then you had to one-on-one fight
Yes.
Saren in what was a brilliant fight that I think you had like single-digit hit points
Yeah,
left.
it was incredible. Like I had the turn I won. I had to win that turn.
Yeah, oh yeah, because he was in darkness, I believe,
Yeah.
getting advantage because he was hidden technically on all the attacks against you, and he had sneak attack and everything from being a rogue and stuff. So yeah, if he had hit you, if he had had one more turn, he would have definitely hit you, and he would have definitely dropped you to zero.
Oh, 100%. That was a very fun fight though. That was a very, very fun fight.
I do love how that whole plot worked out. Did I ever tell you before I had a whole plan for that. We're getting really on topic here. I'm sorry, I won't stay on this too long. So when I first came up with that idea, right,
Mm.
I had this really cool scene in my head I wanted to go through, but it kind of involved Kieran staying in the campaign so that Saren was a player character, and then he could witness this as well. And I wanted to do a whole thing where like you guys ended up fighting like this evil or other Saren,
Yeah, the
who
imposter.
was the imposter, yeah. And I wanted to do this whole scene where like all of you were in the Drow city of Narveen, which is where Saren was the exiled prince from. And I wanted to do this thing where both Sarens were brought in, and you guys weren't prisoners necessarily. You weren't handcuffed or chained up or anything, but you're standing on two separate sides of the room, and the representatives or the authorities or the whatever kind of governing body
Mhm.
of Narveen is there in the middle, and they go, "You're both claiming to be this person, Saren. We don't know which one of you is lying, so they're going to cast Zone of Truth." And then I would have Kieran's character walk in
Mm.
and go, "Please state your full name." And he'd go, "My name is Saren. I'm a prince of Narveen." And then he'd go, "Okay, step out of the circle." Then you come in, "Please state your full name." And he would go, "My name is Saren. I'm a prince of Narveen." And they'd be like, "But they're in a zone of truth. So how could they both be telling the truth?" And the idea is that the other fella was technically an imposter, but he didn't know he was.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah, yeah. So he was told that he was uh, the real Saren and fully believed that he was the exiled prince, but actually he wasn't.
Yeah, interesting peek behind the screen.
Yeah,
Uh,
never got to play that scene. I thought that would have definitely ended a session on that moment.
yeah.
He says the exact, and then he says the exact same thing. He must believe he is the same person or whatever. And then I'm going to call it there, guys, for the week.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, that would have been a sick cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Fair play. So talking about crime as a downtime activity, it's actually pretty well
Yes.
fleshed out. A lot of like I said, I had early on in my DMing campaign, I had a player who liked to steal a lot of stuff, and sometimes he'd be like, yeah, while everyone's asleep, I want to like sneak out my window and like go to like a shop nearby or something, like break in and like steal like the gold in the register, or like if it's a blacksmith shop, like a bunch of swords or something like that.
I did that in my very first ever D&D session. I was playing a ranger, half elf, but my background was thief, and I thought, or criminal, sorry. And I thought I should definitely like play up the criminal thing in that case. So the very first session, we're sitting in a tavern as you do,
Yes.
and at one point the DM's like the door gets kicked open, a bunch of guys run in, and they like flip over tables and use them for cover and take cover behind them, and like three city guards follow them in. Through the door with crossbows and they're firing at them and they're just hitting into the table. And basically all anarchy broke loose and the DM was like, what do you guys want to do? And then when it came around to my turn, I was like, oh, I'll like run and jump behind the bar for cover. So I did that and I hopped over the bar and I hid. He's like, anything else you want to do? And I'm like, yeah, is there like a lockbox or just. And straight away I
Yeah.
went looking for the money behind the bar. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. That's fun.
Yeah. No,
Crime does come up in D&D.
it does. It comes up more often than you think it would. And even as we're kind of sitting here and talking about this, I just remembered that when we were in like my like Dragonborn area, that's like based on Japan. Uh, my rogue, he was like pickpocketing. There was like a massive festival on one evening, and like my rogue was like pickpocketing a bunch of people, because he had a disguise, so he would like walk up. He like saw a group of four. He like I had to make a perception check, and he looked around. And was like, oh, there's a group of four Dragonborn that look particularly well to do, when they're kind of like wandering around the place and do it. Actually, this is how could I ever forget this? This is one of my favorite moments as a DM ever. So like he sees the four Dragonborn, they all look fairly well to do. And I was like, okay, yeah, what you want to do is like, I want to see, I'm going to follow them for a little bit and see what they're. I was like, okay, make a stealth check. He rolls like stupidly high, like I think like 23, 24, 25 area. So I'm like, yeah, you feel like you're like unseen. You're doing the like I said he was doing the like Assassin's Creed shoulder touch through the crowd kind of thing, like, and eventually he follows these guys around. And at one point, one of them splits off to go to the bathroom or get food or something. So my rogue sees that, goes and follows that guy, and because he's now seen that guy, he pulls out his hat of disguise, puts it on, and becomes that guy. He then turns around and he goes, okay, right, I'm gonna go back to the group. And he's like, oh, and I'm gonna pretend I'm a little bit tipsy, had a little bit too much to drink, and I'm gonna do the old fumble shoulder bump and pickpocket. And I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. I was like, so do a performance check and a sleight of hand check. So it does the performance check, it performs, has a drunk admirably, does the sleight of hand check, does really, really well with the sleight of hand, but he still bumped into them. So he bumps into them. And I was like, okay, what do you say when you like bump into them? And he's like, oh yeah, I bumped into them. I was like, oh, sorry, too much to drink. Sorry. And I was like, okay, so like you roll over and you bump into this guy, you pickpocket him, and like I said, he like stole this like really fancy looking scroll out of this guy's pocket, pickpockets him. And he says, you look at them and you say, oh, sorry, too much to drink. And they look back at you and go, and he was like, what? I was like, do you speak Draconic? And he was like, I do not. I was like, well, they don't speak common. And he basically ended up with like the two of them trying to figure out, and then like I think at one point one of the other mages came around and they could hear like cast like tongues or something so you could understand them. No, he is Draconic. And they were like questioning him in Draconic, being like, what the hell? Why did you bump into like Bill? Like Bill did nothing. Like what, you too much drink? You haven't drank all night. What's wrong with you? And he was just like not answering, and they were like, come on, spit it out. Like, what's going on? Like, what's wrong with you tonight? And he used to be like, goodbye. And he just turned around and ran. And so you go against them, like, they follow you. He was like, right, I'm going to run.
Movement, action, dash, bonus action, dash.
Run around the corner, into another group of people, looks around the place, sees someone entirely different, goes, I'm going to be him, puts the hat in the sky, is back on again, changes person, and then was like, okay, do his stealth as well. So these guys like come running around the corner to find their friend, because I think he ended up like punching one of them. And he just like comes sprinting around the corner looking for him, and my rogue's just there. I think he's disguised as like a waitress or something, and he's just like wandering around picking up glasses and stuff. I like stuff like that is so fun, and I think that's what I like about crime in D&D is it does open up a lot of very fun opportunities of like yes-anding.
Oh, it's almost in my experience. I just don't get on to some missions or quests you'll go on that are specifically crime things. You know, I want you to steal this gem from this lord's manor or something like that. Stuff like that does happen, but I think more often than not,
Crims, bruv.
the criminal activities that come up in
Yeah.
D&D. God, sorry, my brain just shut down for a second there. I had to do a full factory reset. Um, the crimes that come up in D&D are typically kind of improvised
Mm.
things an awful lot of the time. It's in the moment I want to try and pickpocket this, or I don't know, I want to wait till this guy goes away and steal his horse, or I'm going to purposely decide to forge these things, or and pretend to be this other person or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
In my experience, that they're more often than not they're improvised because the player decided in the moment that they wanted to do this wacky thing, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, to be honest, the only reason I actually knew crime was a downtime activity is because I had a player who did a lot of like on in the moment, spur of the moment, like crime and like pickpocketing and like breaking and entering and all that kind of stuff. So like when it came to downtime, and I was, because it was the first time I'd ever done downtime with my guys, I was looking through what could they actually do. Like I wanted to like present them with all the options and understand them myself, so that if they got hooked by any of them, I'd be able to help them. And so when it came to crime's actually handled in a way that I think it's done very well in terms of dealing with the problems that can arise with like spur of the moment, I want to pickpocket someone, or I'm going to steal this magic item, or that kind of stuff, where like it happens and then you're like, okay, what is like a reasonable response for this, like in terms of from like either the person who's being stolen from, do they notice, do they not notice, like at what point do the city watch get involved, or guards get involved, like at where, like in terms like how like serious do they take it, like how many guards get involved, all that kind of stuff. Or at least that's what my brain spirals out into when I start thinking about like on the spot crime and the panic sets in. We're like, oh god, I have to make this fun.
I'd say that's pretty accurate though about like, and like I always feel like it's like you did where you're like where he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm a bit drunk, and you're like, oh yeah, you say that to them perfect. They respond with and they're just talking like in draconic. Like I think you almost need to, in any situation like that, throw a spanner in the works and just kind of try to catch the player off, because I feel like that's what makes it fun. If you were just like, it's not like I pickpocket that guy and you're like, roll a check, and they go 22, and you're like, yeah, cool, you get 5 gold. That's not really
Yeah.
that fun. But if you kind of have them play it out and go, how do you do it? What do you say? What's his response? You know, and you can spin that a whole mess of different ways and different combinations,
And
which makes for a little interesting interaction, you know.
yeah, absolutely, and it can become like a running gag as well. Like, you know, oh, you're always getting arrested. Like Keyleth in season 1 of Critical Role. It's not in Legend of Vox Machina that much. She was constantly getting arrested. She got arrested like 5 or 6 times, I want to say, in the first like 2 months worth of like, they would go to like 3 different cities and she's immediately arrested in all of them. Like,
She that you bring up Vox Machina, there is a YouTube channel I watch, and I cannot remember the guy's name, but he's basically
fraud on the
doing
telly.
a. Sorry?
Fraud on the telly.
No, no. I know that guy. Sorry, but this is a different fella. That guy's following the current campaign and doing
Mm.
updates and theories and stuff like that.
Oh, Super Geek
Um,
Mike.
yes, I think
Yeah,
so.
he does
Kind
Critical
of
Role.
red-haired fella.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, he's got a beard. He's like, does I think it's called Critical Role Deconstructed.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that Super Geek
Um,
Mike. He's a really, really great YouTube channel. Actually, would highly recommend to anyone interested in D&D.
Very, very good. He does so like every 2 weeks he'll pick a new episode. He's going through all the original
Yeah.
series at the moment, which is great. He'll give a recap of the episode and he'll explain certain things that happened during it, such as like why players decided to make this decision, or why the DM, or how the DM handled this thing when it seemed to be, he wasn't expecting it to come up. Or one player asked this question and he's like, I don't think Matt was ready for that, so what he did was this. And it's really, really good. But he talks a lot in one of his more recent ones about because they just arrived in Vasselheim.
Yes.
And Vasselheim is a city on a different continent that is very different from Iman. It's way more pious and religious. It's built around these ancient temples to the gods, like they were literally dawn of civilization style temples. And the different parts of the city are governed by different religious bodies, and they have a whole thing where like, they have a whole scene where there is a hydra, a horn goes off and a hydra starts attacking the town, and they're like, we're adventurers, we're just going to do the thing that we do. So and like, looking back on it, I'm like, when I look at this, I'm like, that was bait. Insert that gif of Mad Max where he's like, that's bait.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because that absolutely is bait. because he knew that they wouldn't be able to resist going into a fight and killing a big monster and stuff. But it turns out that in Vasselheim, monster slaying contracts are very strictly regulated, and specifically one group called the Slayers Take are the ones responsible for this. So the city always goes through them when they need a monster killed. Um, and so Vox Machina had come out. They killed this Hydra. Midway through the fight, another team of adventurers show up. These are actually from the guild, and then because someone else gets the kill, I forget who got the actual final kill on it, but one of Vox Machina killed the Hydra, and then the leader of the other team is like, "Oh no, this is a big mess now. You guys are going to get in so much trouble, and we're going to get in trouble for like losing our contract, and you're going to get in trouble for stealing a contract from the guild." And they have to go back, and this is Matt's way of making sure that they had to take on a contract from the guild, because he had some guest stars coming in over the next couple of weeks, and he split them up into two groups.
That was
But yeah, like that's an interesting thing is in how different regions can have different tolerances or policies on certain things. If he was to go back to Amon and a Hydra or some other thing attacked the city, and they swung in and just immediately killed this monster and dropped it dead in the middle of the city or whatever, and there'd be a parade thrown for them in Amon. But because of the way laws and regulations are done in Vasselheim, they actually end up getting in trouble for it and had to kind of quickly do this extra job to like undo what they had done incorrectly.
Yeah. No, that was a really good example. But I suppose to actually get down to like talk about like crime as a downtime, like I said, it's pretty well fleshed out actually. So if you want to do a crime when you're on downtime, so you need to spend 1 week and at least 25 gold pieces at first gathering info on your targets. Which I think is actually like a really good opportunity for some like really solid like role play and like actual like mechanical rolling in it. For like the actual player who's engaging in the crime, you can like have them do like a mini solo mission where they like, I don't know, stealth up onto the roof of a house to like get a view in through a window into like a warehouse where all this stuff is stored or whatever. Then after you do that, when you actually want to commit the crime, you make a series of 3 checks. A stealth check, a thieves tools check, and then the player's choice of either investigation, perception, or deception. And those 3 checks is what determines whether you succeed at your crime or not. So if you so when the player gets to choose any the one of those 3 for the final check, they also set the DCs for the 3 checks from
yes.
I believe it goes 10, 15, 20, 25 with a capping out at 25. So if you, and then basically depending on your successes, that then determines how much gold or loot you get from a really handy loot table that they have here. So for example, if you just completely bite it, if you roll like 3 ones and you just fail miserably, you will get jail time. You will actually be put in prison. And the fine is equal to the amount of gold you would have gotten from the crime if you succeeded. And you are in jail for 1 week for every 25 gold pieces you would have gotten for doing the crime.
Context, at the lowest DC, that's 2 weeks.
Yeah, at the lowest
DC. At the highest DC, that is 40 weeks. So almost a year, like most of a year gone.
Yeah, that's enough time to make 2 rare magic items. So the table that they give you, it's actually really like as I was saying, it's actually pretty well laid out. You have a loot value base and then it's versus a DC. So as Conor was saying, the lowest DC 10, that's only 50 gold pieces, and they say it's the robbery of a struggling merchant, which I like the little the discussion descriptions they give you, because they're little story hooks basically. They're like mini little plot story hooks that you can use as part of this just to like set stuff off, because there is also complications and consequences to you committing crimes, and we will get to that in just a second. 15 is 100 gold pieces, robbery of a prosperous merchant. 20, 200 gold pieces, robbery of a noble. That's obviously actually going to have some like pretty big consequences if you steal something from a noble house. That's actually like that was actually a large part of early Critical Role campaign 3. With Dorian's brother having stolen something from a noble house. And then finally 25, 1,000 gold pieces, 40 weeks in jail if you get up, and robbery of one of the richest figures in town. And I'm like, if a player came to me and said they wanted to rob one of the richest people in town, I would have happen over downtime. But what I would do is I would pull the rest of the party in on that as well, because that is not a one-person job.
I don't know. I could see it being a one-person job if you, particularly if the player wants to live out the fantasy of, you know, I don't know, I'm Sly Cooper, kind of. I'm the
Yeah.
world's greatest thief, kind of thing, and I want to steal this painting or something like that. It'll be. Sorry, I just thought of the scene in the Mr. Bean movie where he like breaks into the gallery and it's the Whistler's mother painting,
Oh
and he's
god.
there and he like cuts it out with a Stanley knife and he takes a poster and like paints it with varnish so it looks like it's an oil painting,
Yeah.
and then like because he ruined the original one or whatever. But yeah, I was picturing a heist going. There's a great scene in that actually, which to this day still makes me laugh, where he just because Rowan Atkinson is so good at like physical comedy, and it's a bit where it's not on the actual break-in. It's on a bit where he has ruined the painting, and he wants to bring it somewhere to try and fix it. So he's got it, and it's like it's about the size of a tabletop,
Mhm.
and he throws a sheet over it, and he brings it out into the hallway, and starts walking along with it. But because he wants people to think it's actually a cart that he's pushing, and he can't see the wheels because of the sheet, he's just going, and he's making the noise. But it's a narrow corridor, and he comes head to head with another fella who is pushing a cart of similar size. And as he gets close to your man, he's got his hands like this, and he's pushing it. And as he gets close to your man, he goes, "Ooh," like that. He looks up, and your man goes, "What's he?" Your man just looks up, and goes, "What's he looking at?" And he just goes, and walks around him. And your man does a double take, and he's like, "Wait, how did he?"
Oh,
I'll
amazing.
send you on the scene if you haven't seen it. It's so funny. It's honestly it's just some of his best like kind of physical
Yeah.
kind of it's so funny. I'm picturing a heist like that though. Sorry,
Oh
that's
yeah,
just me.
no, totally, totally. No, you're grand. But yeah, so that's if you fail completely, you're in jail possibly up to like 40 weeks, which is at
Yeah.
that point I'd be either immediately like scheduling a prison break arc for the game, or I'd be
Hmm.
like, do you want to make a new character? Like,
Yeah, like will your guys serve out this jail time, or do you guys want to bust them out, kind of thing?
yeah. I would give the option. I assume most people would be like, yeah, no, we're just gonna bust you out of jail whether you like it or not.
Yeah. It happened to you guys, like you
Yeah.
guys were doing a train heist essentially. It was more part of a resistance effort than a straight up criminal organization, but you guys did a train heist, which actually didn't end up going well, and
No.
three of you got captured, um, and put in jail, and then you were the only one who didn't,
Yeah.
by the skin of your teeth, and you went back to the resistance, and you were like, hey, the rest of them just got captured. You're trying to pull off this train heist for you guys, and they were like, okay, let's organize. So then you guys had it was you and then three other random characters that the lads came up with for that, breaking themselves out of prison.
Yeah, no, that was really fun actually. That was like a really good, and I again another really good way. I think we talked about that in our like TPK episode as a way to like maybe if you want to like avoid like a TPK, have them captured if possible.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, like it could spiral out again. Like I was saying with the other stuff, it could literally spiral out into like a whole mini arc just based on the fact that someone wanted to do crime as a downtime. But yeah, so getting back to the checks, if one check is successful, the heist fails, but your character escapes. So it's not the end of the world. You just lose 25 gold pieces, basically. But if two checks are successful, the heist is a partial success. So you get half the payout. And then if all checks are successful, you earn the full value of the loot. And again, that can go from 50 gold pieces all the way up to 1,000 gold pieces. So you can actually get, like, if you want to spend your time, like, committing crimes and you succeed, and you go for the higher DCs, it can be worth a significant amount of gold to your character.
And kind of it's interesting that all of these are related to robbery.
Yeah, I guess, because,
I,
like,
I I would like it if they kind of expanded a little bit. Like, what if you want to be like a smuggler or something?
we will
Um,
actually touch on that later because
oh, okay.
there are a number of different criminal backgrounds, and smuggler is one of those backgrounds.
Okay,
But
cool. I'm just thinking like if you wanted, like, would you give different, because it's stealth, thieves tools, and investigation or perception,
mm,
like as a dungeon master, would you maybe specify three different ones?
yeah,
Stealth probably makes sense. Thieves tools doesn't make sense if you're smuggling something. Deception does. So maybe like deception, perception, or performance maybe.
if you're
And
like
stealth.
if you're like a heavy or part of a like a protection racket, I would give intimidation.
Yeah, absolutely. Intimidation, maybe, and strength, maybe for another one.
Yeah.
If you're doing, again, if you're just doing three separate ones, that could be. I would like to see more options like that. Obviously, there's some crimes that you don't want to have to necessarily roleplay at the table.
Yeah,
But I
of
mean,
course. Yeah.
I, I think. Oh, what would you roleplay if your character was just like dealing drugs on the side?
Like I think I've roleplayed that in my current campaign with my character's buying drugs from a shady guy. Like, I have actually had to do that. Yeah, his name is Shad. He's a fungus druid that owns a shop with a very special basement called what's it again? Glasses and Grasses. That's the name of his shop. But yeah, they also have complications. So like, if you aren't like Sly Cooper and things don't go well, things go a bit tits up. They do actually have a pretty interesting little
You haven't played Sly Cooper 2, Band of Thieves, because
things. Yeah, yeah.
spoilers about at the end of the second act, or give or take, your friends get captured, and you have to. I think Bentley has to resolve it himself and get the two of them out. It is Bentley, yeah.
It's been so long since I played Sly
Oh,
Cooper
what
2, man.
masterful games.
Those are so good. I think they might have added those to PlayStation Premium recently.
If so, I'd. Do you know what? I borrowed the first one off a friend. The second one I played to death, and the third one I played a lot as well. But the second one I liked the most, and my sister also played it, and she was one of those people that doesn't put a disc back in the box, so it got all scratched up and wouldn't work after a while.
just some casual shade on the podcast. Yeah, but anyway, the complications for committing crime as a downtime they're actually pretty good. So what it's a D8 roll, and you can also it also sort of tells you that you can create your own if you want to, which is good. I always enjoy like people making custom tables and stuff like that. But the complications are as follows: you get a bounty equal to your earnings is offered for your information about your crime. This also there's a little star beside this in the book where it says this may also involve a rival, which is pretty cool. You can get that kind of in as an NPC, and you could even use the resources from Wildmount for the rival party to make that rival. After that, you've got an unknown person contacts you, threatening to reveal your crime if you don't render a service. Your victim is financially ruined by your crime, which I feel is very heavy.
Like unless it's like a shitty noble or corrupt guard or something like that. But like also like I'm looking at the very first one, like you rob a struggling merchant. Don't rob struggling merchants.
Do you know,
like if someone's doing fine, like they're getting by and they have no problems with their business, yeah, fair enough. If you want to steal something, steal from them. That them and up. Don't rob from the struggling person who's barely getting by.
Your victim is financially ruined by your crime. All I can think of is Joe Exotic. I'll not, but I won't financially recover from this.
Someone just lost a fucking arm, Joe.
Yeah. Oh man, I gotta watch that again.
I love the idea of the different kind of varying degrees of success and stuff in this. I like the idea of if you get to one success where you get away, but you don't successfully get anything out of it. That could be a cool idea if you wanted to make the complication in that rival is who's also a thief, and you're kind of like trying to out thief each other basically. If you arrive in there. Sort of, but you arrive and their calling card or whatever is already on the pedestal that's meant to contain the thing.
Wasn't that an episode of Jackie Chan Adventures when they were getting like the snake talisman? There was like there was like a French thief who like kept stealing the talisman before Jackie could take it.
What was the snake talisman's power?
Invisibility.
That makes sense for a thief.
I didn't even have to question that. That was as deeply ingrained in me as my genetics. But yeah, some of the other more interesting ones is you rob someone who is under a local crime lord's protection and now they want revenge. There is also another one. Your victim asks one of your adventuring companions to solve the crime, which I think is a great one, particularly if your player is doing this like on the down low, is doing this like at night when the rest of the party are asleep. If a random peasant NPC comes up to your player and is like, oh, I heard you were such a great hero of the people. Someone has stolen these artifacts of my faith from my house. Could you and your friends come and hunt down this evildoer? You know, like that would be so much fun to just like actually get into like that level of stuff with them. Other ways that crime is actually like supported by like in book stuff in D&D. So Conor, if I asked you to guess how many criminal backgrounds are in 5e without looking, how many do you think there are? like crime, like criminal as a background itself, but also like crime, like specific backgrounds.
Okay, so obviously criminal is gonna be one.
Yeah.
Charlatan is kind of in there as well, I would say.
Charlatan is more like I look at charlatan as more like a trickster, so we'll say debatable on that one. But go ahead.
I feel like a charlatan would have no problem. I'll put it this way: like the charlatan would have no problem like pocketing change left on the bar counter that wasn't theirs.
But like, I think there's a difference between like a con man and like a criminal, if you get me.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree, but I'm going to count that as one.
Okay.
So okay, criminal charlatan. You said smuggler a while ago. I think there's a pirate background in one of the books. Yeah.
There is, yeah.
I can't think of any more off the top of my head. I'm going to say 5 total, including my one extra potentially, if you don't count that.
Okay, no, that's so. I actually don't have Charlotte in here. Because when I was reading it, I was like, that's more like I almost read Charlotte more as like, you know, like the dude who has like the 3 caps and like he hides the bean under it and like moves them around. And or like the guy who has the
upstanding citizens.
Okay, yeah, but they're not breaking into houses and stealing money from people, right? They're just conning people. Like, it's an unfair game, but it's a con. You know, that's how I looked at it. Now, some of these are variants nearly, but like if you count the other 2 kinds of spy that are criminal/spy that are printed, there are 8 criminal backgrounds. We have like bog standard criminal/spy. Then there's criminal Baldur's Gate, criminal Myriad operative. We have
they don't count. That's all criminal.
Okay. We have dimmer operatives, a spy from the Ogden Trust, a Volstrucker agent, a pirate, and a smuggler. And those are what at least I considered anyway while I was looking through stuff.
Question: If we're to group all the criminals together and everything, what do we end up with as our total?
Oh, like group out like 8, Conor. Like if we include charlatan, 9.
No, but I'm saying like if we you mentioned 3 criminals
sorry.
different settings.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Damn, I was one off. Okay.
Yeah, you're one off only. But we do have we've like the criminal spy. Now some of these they're very, very minor differences, but I felt like it was worth mentioning just so that someone doesn't comment and be like, oh, you forgot the Myriad operative or whatever. So like the regular criminal, you get deception and stealth as proficiencies. You get a gaming set, thieves tools. For equipment, you get a crowbar, a set of dark common clothes, including a hood, and a pouch with 15 gold pieces in it.
Never underestimate the crowbar.
No, Jason Todd did, and it was did not end well for him.
Jesus Christ.
But you get there's some fun tables in this. You get your criminal speciality, which is a bit like what you were kind of saying earlier, in terms of like you wish that that all the crime stuff for the downtime was more specific to like maybe you're not a thief, maybe you're not just stealing stuff, maybe you're doing other things. So like here with your criminal speciality, you can be a blackmailer, a burglar, an enforcer, a fence, a highway robber, a hired killer, a pickpocket, or a smuggler.
A fence is an interesting one actually, because that means people are selling stolen goods to you and you're going to get rid of them. So like in my mind that means like maybe investigation to find potential buyers, maybe a persuasion check to
I'd go like deception, persuasion.
One or the other. Maybe if you want to sell to someone who isn't aware that it's stolen, maybe you could go that way. Or persuasion if you just want to get a good price when you're selling it to someone. And then maybe
if it was a fence, I would go history and deception.
History works. Yeah. If it depends on the nature of the object, I suppose you're trying to sell. But if it's like a painting or something, you might need to know the history of it to be able to adequately sell it. Or like if you're like, oh, this painting is from this particular.
Yeah, I was thinking more like
knights.
Yeah, like knowing like basically like knowing the lore of the area, like knowing like, oh yeah, this is painted by a very famous painter. It's worth X amount of money, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Or it's a painting like of a particular manor in the countryside, and you're like, oh, I happen to know that man is owned by this family. If I try to sell to them, they're more likely to want it in that case. Again, I'm not saying like you said yourself, the crime downtime is represented very well in the book. I just think it'd be fun if they were like, gave a couple more examples of things you could do, particularly because they do in the background mention the different kinds of criminal you could be, whether you're like an offense or an enforcer or a thief or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like,
I actually didn't know this existed until I started doing a bit of research for this, because I've anytime I've made a character with criminal as the background, I just pick criminal and then I go to like, oh, proficiencies, languages, tools, and I just go to like the bits I can change that are mechanically. But like actually looking at this, like I really like that they do give you like. They do give you the option. They're not just like, oh, you're like a general criminal. Like you can be if you want to be, just like a general kind of like handyman or henchman or whatever. But like that, I do like that they have like all the way down. Like if you want to play like a character in a thieves guild or like a crime guild of some kind, like having like these 8 like essentially like story hooks or headings or inspirations for your character that you can choose from, I think is like a really good way to like do that, and I'd give your character a bit more originality than just like, oh, I'm a thief.
that would be I think I think people, particularly like you said, like I think I played a criminal a couple of times as my background, will say. But I tend to just take that to mean, oh, my character is just kind of generally a troublemaker. But
Yeah.
realistically, it's a much more fun experience for you, the player, and for the DM, and probably for everyone at the table, if you were to come up with like a specific field that your character operates within. Because criminals aren't like, just because you're a criminal doesn't mean like, oh yeah, like, oh, I don't know, I've stolen people's wallets on the street. I'm a pickpocket. That doesn't mean you're also like, trafficking mountains of cocaine places either. Like people tend to have the thing they do, and that's about it.
It's
So I
very
think
like early 2000s anti-piracy. Yeah, you wouldn't download a car.
you wouldn't download the cars. And to which I answer, I absolutely would if I could.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I think given the speciality and stuff, that can be a lot more fun. It can give your character way more personality. I remember Matt Colville. Matt Colville. Here's me mentioning Matt Colville again. Matt Colville used to do campaign diaries of a game he was running when he was working at Turtle Rock Studios. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry. The Chain is a different one. My bad.
Oh, the chain. They're a mercenary organization, or whatever. This was just I think it was a similar world or the same world potentially.
Okay.
That Matt was running in, and they were kind of hopping between a couple of smaller towns. But yeah, he had a guy. I want to say it was his friend Lars. I could be wrong on this though. Who was playing a rogue in the party, and he actively came to Matt and said that he wanted to start like his own a thieves guild, or maybe a thieves guild or like an informants network. And he actually like had a couple of people in the local area working for him, gathering intel and stuff. I think that would be a very fun kind of pursuit as a player.
That's basically what my rogues NPC Sai has been doing for the last few months. He sent him to Pontamalud to keep an eye on things and find out if anything funky was going on there. And just so happens while he was there, the country got broken into thirds. So there was.
But he just need to call them, and he was just like, "Hey, something strange happened."
Yeah, and they were like, "Oh, sorry, kid, this isn't the Ghostbusters."
Yeah. Terrible.
I'm sorry, you said call and something strange. That's how my brain works. Okay.
Fair enough.
But yeah, no, totally.
I don't approve of it, but I accept it.
Yeah, as long as you can understand, and then like spinning off this the criminal. You have the Baldur's Gate version of the criminal and the Myriad Operative version of the criminal. Baldur's Gate, obviously from Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, and the Myriad Operative is from the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. The Myriad Operative doesn't really have any significant changes to it in terms of like mechanically wise. It's almost identical to, or if not completely identical to, your base criminal / spy. But obviously there is the whole lore of, you're dealing with the lore of Exandria there, and the Myriad is one of the, it's like the Clasp and the Myriad, I believe, are the two big ones.
The Clasp are the Tal'Dorei kind of criminal organization who are mostly made up of like thieves and assassins, and kind of stuff like racketeering, that kind of stuff. The Myriad are into like drugs and smuggling and other stuff. I think they have a slightly more, not entirely, but slightly more naval based criminal kind of empire. Also, like their in the various forms of media and stuff like that have come out, whether it's the D&D or Critical Role itself, or some of the comics, or some of the supplement books for 5e that have been released, the Myriad are always written in a way that makes them sound terrifying.
Yes.
Because the
Yeah.
clasp sound bad, and then they're like, right, so there's these other guys called the Myriad. The clasp don't F with these dudes because they
Yeah.
are savage. Like, they sound, they describe the Myriad like they're describing drug
Yeah,
cartels.
that's what
Like,
I was going to say. That the Myriad have always felt to me like the cartels, like the cartels.
yeah,
Like they
it's like,
you just don't mess with them. They will kill you and your entire family.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they have no problem wiping you or your entire household off the map for like the slightest bit of inconvenience to them. They just don't mess around.
Yeah.
And I think like, just if we can just talk about like world building, criminal organizations, because like as a dungeon master, I think you need to find a particular niche when coming up with a criminal organization that kind of like fits with the world, but also is a fresh spin.
Yeah.
That's what I just said to you a while ago. I always admire the Anglers as a criminal organization, because I think that's a solid bit of world building that makes perfect sense. Where they are based in the Sea Elf city that is half underwater makes perfect sense that they would have an organization like that. I love their masks and the idea that because they're called the Anglers, they have that glowing light, that green light in the center of their forehead, like an anglerfish kind of would on their kind of thing. So good. But yeah,
Well,
I
thanks,
think but I just
Yeah.
from you mentioned that like early in the podcast, like I think within the first 5 episodes we were talking
Probably,
about that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
That was around the time when we were in that area. Yeah.
So like when that was happening, like I just remember you telling me this, and I was like, that's a really really solid. It's a solid name, first of all. Like, I'm quite happy with the White Spiders and the Crimson Corsairs, but that's the same naming convention for two criminal things. Is here's a noun and here's a color. Like, it's just like I'd like to be able to break that mold a little bit. I did actually have an idea for one organization which I may
go on, please.
include. Is same world, but I might include them later on. They're based in the Empire in my world, and their name is, one second now, I have it on a note. Because I my classic D&D note where any random thought that comes to mind, I scribble it down. That's monsters, spells, classes.
If it may,
This is a separate thing actually, but I did have an idea for one based out of Rajang, which is my Tabaxi country, which is kind of based on like if you had all of the trimmings and dressings of like feudal China, but you were very capitalist.
Oh, okay.
So just turn that on its head entirely. But these guys are called the Silk Swords. They would actually be competitors with because they're kind of cutthroat pirate kind of ones, and they're all very talented duelists and stuff. But they would very much be competitors of the Crimson Corsairs.
Gotcha.
I thought that was a cool name. What are these guys called? So basically, the idea is that these were actually not originally a criminal organization, but actually, oh yes, that's right. Okay. Oh yes, okay. I have two names for them, right? So they're either called the Bureau, or they're called the Fulcrum.
Ooh, I like the fulcrum.
So like a fulcrum is the point by
at
which
things rotate around. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the idea is like they have involvement and agents everywhere. So the idea is that originally they were established, funded, and trained by the Empire as a form of like secret police and stuff like that. That were like kind of like operating just beneath the table and stuff like that. People kind of maybe knew someone like that existed, but they didn't know much about them. So they were trained to manipulate and control the Empire from within. Threats, bribes, assassinations, etc. Once they were thoroughly implemented and ingrained into the Empire and beyond, Empire and beyond, they defected, becoming an independent criminal organization that the Empire inadvertently founded.
I like that a lot. It very much reminds you of how in the 80s the Americans gave a ton of guns to the Taliban.
You know how in the 80s, the Americans gave a ton of guns to fucking everybody?
But like specifically, they like heavily armed the Taliban, and then the Taliban became a real problem for America in the like two
It was,
thousands.
it was the same thing in South America. They installed like they want certain people to come out on top. So the CIA is like, here, we're going to give you guns and all this kind of stuff that you can intel, and then you can become in charge, and then we'll be friends, right? And they're like, yes. It's essentially the
The
scene with
$1 trillion bill.
the $1 trillion bill. And it's like, so we're friends now, right?
You've won
What
back.
friends?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love. Oh god, I've listened to so many podcasts about like crazy CIA missions and stuff like that. But getting back to crime in D&D, because we do eventually have to talk about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that. Well, like we spiral off the Myriad there, but the Myriad are basically like somewhere between the CIA and the cartels, and that's how they're kind of played.
Yeah.
But in terms of
Super secretive,
yeah.
highly effective, and scary lethal when they want to be.
Yes, but in terms of like mechanically, they don't really play that different at all to the regular criminal or spy. Baldur's Gate, you do get your the Baldur's Gate one. One thing I do appreciate with the Baldur's Gate one is you get another table. This is also a DA table. It replaces the one from the OG criminal slash spy, where you have your 1 to 8 of different kinds of criminal you are. This one instead is your criminal origins, which is all like this is all just like really good backstory stuff. To be honest, there's one. The first one I actually is on the table is one I actually really like. It's you cripple the guild kingpin's cousin without realizing connection. You got the guild to back off demands for your death by offering to make amends by working for the criminals. But even so, the kingpin still plots a personal revenge. That's a whole character story arc there. Like
That's a whole arc.
it really is.
Well, no, sorry. It would only be a whole character backstory if it was 8 pages long. The same amount of information, but 8 pages long.
That's fucking way too accurate. There's some other cool ones as well. Like to you, this is just a way to earn a living. You go to work, do what needs to be done, and get paid. And since crime for thrills, you can strike back at unjust authorities or anything else are amateurs, and they're liable to get you arrested or killed with their idiocy. That's a very like professional hitman, John Wick kind of view.
Yeah.
There's another one I really enjoyed. Oh, number 6 is a great one as well. This is like a very cool plot thread. I think you could do as a character background. A close friend or relative joined the guild and vanished mysteriously. You've worked your way into the lower ranks, hoping to find out what happened to them.
Say that again?
A close friend or relative joined the guild recently and vanished. You joined the guild's lower ranks, hoping to climb and find out what happened to them.
That's a great arc.
There's
That's such a good arc.
like an it's like almost like frustratingly good like plot hooks that are written into this like D8 thing, and like I have never seen it before, and I'm so mad at myself for
This
not.
is the Baldur's Gate one, is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, this is Baldur's Gate. The Myriad one unfortunately doesn't have like it has the criminal specialty table again, but it doesn't change any of the stuff on it.
Right.
And even their they features like criminal contracts and criminal contacts for all the criminals, but all that changes really is the network that you get to use that in. It's very similar actually when we start talking. I kind of divided the criminal backgrounds into like 3 main types. So these are your criminal and the 2 varieties of it. Then we have your spies, like you've your dimmer operative from Ravnica. There's actually quite a bit of support for like crime and crime families and criminal syndicates in the Ravnica book. It's like shockingly really good, because that's all about like houses competing against each other and
Yeah,
operatives and
there's
agents.
a lot of different factions in that Ravnica book.
It's really good. Like to be honest, like when the Ravnica book came out, I was kind of like about it. But the more I DM'd, I found the more and more Ravnica stuff I end up using, because there's really good like just mechanical stuff to take the bones from and like put it into your own stuff in Ravnica.
Some people really don't like it when Wizards release a book like Ravnica or Theros, because I guess I can kind of understand, because if you just want to play Forgotten Realms, or you don't, or you maybe you just don't have any interest in the whole Greek thing, or the weird hyper fantasy thing that Ravnica is, or something like that. I totally get like that's not your flavor, but I love when they release weird books that aren't part of the thing, because I'm like, I look like if I want to run a regular fantasy campaign, or even like a few sessions or something, I already have a million resources with trolls and goblins and and knights and wizards and all that kind of stuff. That's already all there. But when you give me something like Theros or Ravnica or something like that, and you give me really weird options in it, or a Spelljammer now,
Yeah,
like there's some strange stuff in those books, and I'm like, that's good. Give me more of that, because even if I don't one-to-one use it, something strange or weird out of one of those books will definitely inspire something in
100%.
in a campaign to be, I can tweak it and manipulate it a little bit.
100%.
They when I remember when Ravnica came out, they did the PAX shows that they do with Jeremy
Oh,
Crawford,
the
Cosmo Hopper.
yes, the Cosmo Hopper, but sorry, I thought you meant the Rakdos cultists.
Well, I was going to mention that because they ended up doing a whole thing where they had to compete against them, but they were on their blimp kind of airship thing,
Yeah.
but it was like they kind of played it off a little bit like it was Jabba's sail barge
Yeah.
in Star Wars, which I loved.
Yeah, I love those King shows, and the King book actually had some really interesting stuff like that in there as well.
That's another one actually as well. Yeah,
And
weird, but good weird.
yeah, good weird. Particularly, I think it's because the reason that works so well, I think, is because King is D&D, but it's just more comedic, free flowing, less care about the rules D&D.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very, very much less care about the rules.
Yeah. Sorry, but just to give a quick rundown of what I have classed as the spies in the background. So you've our Dimmer Operative from Ravnica, the Augur Trust from Wildmount, and then the Volstrucker Agent from Wildmount. I think of the three of them, I think the Volstrucker Agent from Wildmount is probably the most interesting. If you look at their lore and stuff, the Dimmer Operative, just so you guys know, the Dimmer Operative is a spy again of Ravnica. You skulk in the shadows, infiltrate. What's cool with the Dimmer Operative actually is you are an operative that infiltrates a secondary guild. And so I kind of gave some highlights of everything. All of them have very, very similar stuff. Nearly all of them will get deception and stealth as proficiency, and then proficiency with either thieves' tools, a disguise kit, a poisoner's kit, and a gaming set. Those are the common ones. Mostly the Dimmer gets disguise. The Augur Trust one gets Thieves' Tools and a gaming set, and the Volstrucker Agent gets the Poisoner's Kit, which it's either that or the Thieves' Tools. I think is the most useful one. For the Dimmer Operative, you actually get one language of your choice as well, and it's so similarly with the Volstrucker Agent, you also get to pick a language of your choice with that, which I was appreciative. Get another language. Most of them have a lot of them share similar equipment. The crowbar, the dark clothes with the hood. And then like either 10 or 15 gold pieces. I will give a shout out to both the Dimmer and the Volstrucker Agent for having probably the more interesting equipment. For the Dimmer Operative, you get your Dimmer insignia, 3 small knives, dark common clothes, and you get another set of starting equipment associated with the secondary guild that you joined as part of being a Dimmer Operative, because you're infiltrating another guild as a Dimmer Operative.
Right.
They also have the false identity feature, which you have multiple identities. The one you use the most is the one that demarcates you as a House Dimmer agent. And really cool. Actually, sorry, no, the Dimmer one is probably the best because you get spells if you're a Dimmer Operative.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you get, for you, the spells on the Dimmer Guild spell table are added to the list of your spellcasting class. You get Encode Thoughts and Mage Hand as cantrips, Disguise Self and Sleep for first level, Detect Thoughts and Pass Without a Trace at second, Gaseous Form, Meld into Stone and Non-Detection at third, Arcane Eye and Freedom of Movement at fourth, and Modify Memory at fifth. Those are all really, really useful and cool spells for like a spy type character. They're all like Encode Thoughts is just such a cool spell. Like I've never seen it used. It's very cool though.
That's such an interesting because that's obviously a Ravnica thing.
Yeah.
But that would have been done in that case, like that spell list would have been added there long before we saw any evidence that they were looking to redo backgrounds and start adding features and stuff into them, or feats,
Yeah.
So it's cool to see that maybe they were planning it all that way back, and we're only just now seeing the outcome of that.
Yeah, I would say because of that, I would say that this is probably the most powerful criminal background, but that is very, very Ravnica specific. So if you're running that, you might want to leave that out maybe. The other one that I thought was really cool was the Volstrucker Agent. So your equipment, you get 10 gold pieces, a Poisoner's Kit, and the common clothes. But the feature of them that I really, really, really liked was they have a feature called Shadow Network, where you are connected to the Volstrucker Network. The Volstrucker Agents are basically like spies in Wildmount that work for the Cerberus Assembly. So you have access to their network, and the really cool thing about that is because you've access to that network, you can write letters to other Volstrucker agents in arcane ink, and then burn them in the fire, and they teleport to the person whose name is written on it. It costs 10 gold pieces per page, and it's done with the same ink that wizards use to write their spells into their spellbooks.
Very interesting.
I thought that was particularly cool. And then the final group for the Outlaws.
That's more interesting than most.
Yeah.
Most features you get with backgrounds.
And what's cool about that is as well, that isn't so tied to Wildmount that you could like you could have someone take the Volstrucker agent background, but like just use that as a framework for your own criminal network of a similar kind of style. Because like I think like it would be like, to have that like, oh yeah, the agents of this criminal network can write specifically magical letters to each other, burn them, and it'll appear instantly. So it's very like it's very Harry Potter. It's very, very Harry Potter.
I was gonna say, just like I'm kind of thinking about there. Vulture Creation is, I know, particularly if you watch Critical Role Campaign 2, they've done a lot of shitty things, but they're not strictly a criminal organization.
See, I put like spies into the criminal thing because it's like a lot of breaking and entering and spying.
I suppose,
and,
yeah,
assassinations and poisoning. I would say that I would say the main thing that points to them being criminals, Connor, the poisoner's kit that you get proficiency with when you take the Volstrucker agents.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get proficiency with a poisoner's kit and you're a law-abiding citizen necessarily, you know. But no, you're it's a fair point to make. And like spies and criminal isn't exactly the thing, but I felt it was worth including.
I suppose one country's spy is another country's criminal when you think about it.
Very much so. If you've ever heard about what happens to captured spies. But yeah, and then the last two that I included anyway were they're both are how did I not just name this the nautical ones? The smuggler and the pirate, both of which come from Ghost of Saltmarsh. They're very to be honest, they're super similar. Both of them give you proficiency in athletics and perception. For tools, the pirate gets navigator's tools and vehicles water. The smuggler only gets vehicles water, which I thought was a bit strange. For equipment, the pirate wins out in equipment. You get a belaying pin, which is just it's a reskinned club, which is fun.
Okay.
You get a 50 foot of silk rope, which is cool. One thing I actually really like with the pirate as well is you get a lucky charm. And you can they give you examples like, you know, like, oh, maybe it's like a like a lucky 8-ball, or like a rabbit's foot, or like the tooth of a shark that bit you and you got away, or something like that, you know. Which is cool. I think that's a really fun avenue for like character expression if you have like, oh, it's a lucky charm. And then
I do like when backgrounds do that. Just give you a general like you have this token of this, or it's some sort of memorabilia from a battle you were in or whatever, but then the player gets to come up with what that is and to decide what it is based on their backstory.
Yeah, it's like an iconic feature of your character that people can always associate you with. And you get a set of common clothes. You do get a cool little feature with the pirate as well. You get the feature of bad reputation. Basically, people are afraid of you. They know you're kind of a bad dude, and you can get away with minor crimes, and people just won't report you. And the fun ones they give an example of are like barroom brawls, or not paying your bill at a tavern or an inn, which I like. That's very cool. Smuggler, however, so smuggler, they went out in equipment. You can have fancy leather vests or boots, 15 gold pieces in a set of common clothes, and then they have two features: claim to fame, which if you look at it there, it's the smuggler. I actually really like the claim to fame stuff. Where are we? Yeah, claim to fame. It's a D6 table, and it's basically like every smuggler has their gimmick, and this is yours, or this is a suggestion. So you got Spirit of the Whale. You smuggled stolen dwarven spirits in the body of a dead whale being pulled behind a fishing boat. When you delivered the goods, the corpse suddenly exploded, sending the whale meat and whiskey bottles half a mile. Which is great.
See one here, River Shadows. The riverboat, your riverboat accidentally slipped through the veil into the shadow for several hours. While you were there, you sold some stolen dragonborn artifacts before returning to this plane and paddling home. That's really cool.
I love that because that is such a like old school Irish fairy story kind of thing, where like this lad just wanders
accidentally stumbling into a different realm.
Accidentally stumbling into the like if that was like an old Irish story, it'd be like he accidentally stumbled into the Feywild and spent an evening playing cards with the Fairy King. Like that, totally be what it is. That's really fun. I really like that. They also have the feature down low, you are acquainted with a smugglers network, and it allows you. It's got a cool feature which if you, because you're a smuggler, you know of safe houses in, like, basically they say, like, DM's discretion, but it would essentially be like large enough cities to have a safe house in it for the smugglers network, and you can stay there for free, but the quality of living is quite poor, so you have to take that into account, and also you can keep your presence in the city a secret if that ever becomes necessary. So, like, that would be a really good one to have. Say like if one of us was a smuggler background when all the guys got captured, that would have been a cool one to be like, right, we're going to arrest it. We kind of did it anyway, but like just from the background, be like, right, I know a safe house. I'm going to go arrest the safe house. I have connections through my network. I'm going to arrange a posse of boys to come and break the guys out of prison. That kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Which I also really really liked. But I think that's most of the like that's like all of the backgrounds and stuff that I took down. And then, like, I suppose the final question I would ask Conor is, based on what we've kind of like talked about today and seen and your own kind of experience with playing D&D and like having like players who are rogues or other characters who do engage in like a bit of crime, what resources or features pertaining to like running crime would you like to see possibly implemented in like future D&D?
I think honestly, I think we have a lot of what we could work with already.
It doesn't even have to be like big, just maybe even just like a quality of life thing, or maybe something clarified, or like an addition or an expansion on something.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, I'd like to see more options for different kinds, because they different kinds of crime, I guess, supported. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, you can kind of alter this stuff for yourself anyway as a dungeon master, but I'd like to see a little bit of that maybe. I wouldn't. Do you know what I'd like to actually see? No, never mind. Take it back because we already have it. I was gonna say I'd love to see like a crime based D&D adventure. Dragon Heist is already.
Yeah, we have that. And I will also point out we do have, if you go to the character creation section of, what book is this again? Eberron. If you go to the character creation section of Eberron, chapter 1, they do have a spot about group patrons, and a part of that, those group patrons is a crime syndicate. And they have like a whole paragraph just on crime syndicates in general, and then they actually have a couple of different ones, they even actually have a section on types of crime, which is quite good. It's a D6 table. You've got acquisitions and retrieval, heists, gang warfare, internal affairs, assassination, and topple the powerful, which I think all of these, to be honest, you could actually, like, even though most of the Eberron crime stuff is quite specific to Eberron because it's to do with the great houses going against each other, I think this D6 table here, syndicate crimes, you could take and just slot into any campaign, really. It's kind of universal. I really like it. The infamy is pretty cool as well. It's another D6 table, 6 options. So even among notorious Barmar clan, your group has a distinct identity and reputation. What's the event or unique trait that makes your crew stand out? Consult the group infamy table for suggestions. Tattoos. Tattoos, your outfit, infamy. Your group is linked to an infamous crime, one that remains the talk of the town. Idols, legitimate, as in like you have a legitimate front. And then legends, you have like an air of mystery. So like it's probably just because I've been watching people react to the first seasons of Peaky Blinders on YouTube recently. But like that table, as I was like listening out, like outfit, infamy, idols, legitimate, legends, I was like, oh, this is just the Shelby's. This is just the Shelby's Peaky Blinders. Like, but I actually would say, if you are like a DM or a player, and you're like, if you're a DM trying to write a new criminal organization and you're looking for inspiration, or you're a player and you want to write like a criminal character, I would highly recommend watching Peaky Blinders, because that'll give you some really great ideas. Because it's like, it's still like it is modern, but it's still early modern. Like, it's early enough that it's still like, they're still using like hatchets and knives and stuff, and like all the pistols are like
you don't have to worry about like you can almost lift some of those stories quite easily because they're still in a primitive enough time that you don't have to worry about like fingerprints and DNA and all that kind of stuff, because those plot points you would need to pluck out of more modern stories to make them fit with a fantasy thing. But like in this case, you don't need to do that with stories from that. You can almost pull them one for one.
And they're like full of like really good examples of like character archetypes for like criminal families and police and all this other stuff that goes on.
If I was to pitch you 2 questions, Martin, as just as we're finishing up.
Yeah,
If I was to ask you right now to pitch me two D&D campaigns,
yeah.
uh,
Okay.
one is a D&D campaign where you are the criminals.
Okay.
How would you do that? No, Joe, we'll leave it at that one. We'll just leave it at that one instead.
You can give me
So
both. You can
how
give me
would you?
both because I do have an answer for the first one because I've been thinking about it for about 2 years and I haven't thought of a good way to do it. But the one where you play the criminals, I would do a Mistborn D&D campaign.
I knew you were gonna say that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I would do.
big massive fantasy heist.
Oh yeah, big mad crazy fancy banquets because what they do in Mistborn is like the overall goal is we defeat the Emperor. But the way they do it is they break that down into like 8 or 9 or 5 or 6 smaller heists, and smaller criminal organizations, jobs, and they all have their own special. There's like a whole team, and they all have their own specialty of stuff they can do with them with the metal magic, which I really really liked. What was the other one?
The other one is how would you do? Let's say maybe a city campaign where you are either adventurers or maybe you work for the city guard or something like
Okay.
that, and you have to contend with criminals. If you were to say this time next week you had to have a campaign ready and it was something like that, where would you start in terms of you are someone who has to contend? Maybe you are a criminal organization contending with a bigger organization, or maybe you're like the city guards or some auxiliaries that are brought in or something like that.
Yeah.
What would you do? And it's all self-contained within one city.
Ooh, all self-contained within one city. Can I give you like a one-line pitch without thinking it out because I only have the idea?
Sure. Yeah.
You and the party are a squad or a squad of city watch guards that work together on the same shift. Last night you were assigned the night shift and some bandits attacked the city walls. You defeated them easily, but when they pulled the bodies in to see who they were, one of the bodies was the crown prince.
Oh, attacking the city itself.
You don't know why. Just when they went to check the bodies, the prince's body was there.
Interesting. And okay, sorry. I'm asking questions as if I'm a player. When you go and check these bodies, is the prince like wearing the same clothes and stuff as the bandits? Does he look like as if he
like
was one of them?
he's in bandit, like he's been dressed in bandit garb, but he was obviously killed beforehand.
Oh, interesting. I like it.
Or like, like all the bandits were killed with you shot them all with arrows and they died outside the walls. But then when you
Yeah.
check the bodies, you find the prince's body and he's had his throat slit.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. So very
Yeah.
obviously, but they're trying to make it seem as though
Yeah,
he was part of it.
like or like the kind of like a false flag war kind of thing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's how I
So
would.
then your party then would be reprimanded for potentially killing the prince.
Oh yeah,
but
like the inciting incident is your squad has been blamed for killing the crown prince, and you have to like maybe you have to
it's
go
the plot
from.
of The Fugitive.
Oh, it is. Sorry, it is. It's the fantasy fugitive. My apologies.
But
Okay.
Martin,
Yes, Connor.
that's all the time we have for today.
Oh man, yeah. I look. Who says crime doesn't pay? That was a lot of fun. Like I was actually shocked how supported crime was by D&D.
I honestly, talking about it now, I would like to run like a big heist in a single city, not bouncing around, just in one city. You arrive in the port and it's like, cool, see that tower? That's what the vault is. We're going to get into that, and then
Yeah.
have it play out over the course of a few weeks, and you plan it and you do all the Sly Cooper games you mentioned earlier. The second and third game do a great job where all the missions you do leading up to like the main mission are like setting up the main mission. So like, for example, you're like, oh, we need to like be able to get in through this pipe into this room, but this pipe is always on and it's filled with boiling water. So you're like, oh, if we go and break this other machine, they won't be able to pump water through there anymore. Also, that will give us an excuse to send someone in as a repairman for that machine, and he'll be our guy on the inside. So you're doing all these things to set up the big mission later on. Like that'd be a good idea over if you wanted to do a short campaign in the city and be like, oh, here, so we have to do like 5 or 6 missions, so you can set up doing the big heist at the end, and then you guys get on your ship and you bolt out of the city,
Yeah.
never to be seen again. Um, But yeah, if you have any questions you'd like us to ask, stories you'd like us to share, or topics you'd like us to cover, please tweet us at MicFlayersPod on Twitter, for as long as that's still going.
Yeah, it's gone drastically downhill in the last week when we were like joking. It's gotten just worse.
It's getting progressively worse. You can find our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor Breaker, and Radio Republic. Martin, where can people find you on the internet?
For now, you can find me on the internet at Twitter at So Sorry It's Over. That's and you can also find me for now on Twitter on the Micflayers podcast Twitter at MicFlayersPod. Both are either below our pictures or down in the bottom right hand corner. Connor, what about you? Where can people find you for now on the internet?
For now, people can find me on the internet, mostly on Twitter at 0.Conor, ZeroPointConor, 1N, very important. And as always, you can find me every Friday here at 6 p.m. Irish time on the Micflayers podcast. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next episode, folks. Bye bye.